Hello developers, and welcome back to Elixir Pro. This is the second video of our TDD series. In our previous video, we were just about starting to test the context part of our application, so without any further ado, let's get started after the intro. So guys, if we check the code from our previous video, we were just about to start doing the context. So if you go to the controller, to do item controller, about to create a function here called to-do dot list to-do items, right? Because that's exactly what we have here in the project with the generators. If you go to the controller, to-do item controller, that's exactly what we have here. But first, we're gonna need to create this to-do module in our project. So let's do that right now. This will be in the backend part of our application. So let's create a file called todo.ex, and let's define a module called def module to do app.todo. And just so that thing that we don't receive the warning, let's create that function which will be def list to do items, and for the meantime let's just return nil. Okay, actually not nil, let's return an empty list, right? Because that's what we had in previous to our refactoring in that controller. So let's go back to that controller. And right now we had exactly the same thing we had. So if we run our tests, nothing changed. I don't know if we were checking for that thing. List to do items. Oh, because we didn't alias that. So let's alias to do app.todo. And if we try to run the test once again, okay, everything's passing. But since this is a TDD approach, so let's go back to our todo.ex and let's create a test for it. So this will be, actually, let me grab this line here, paste, but instead of to-do will be to-do test, and we can check how this has been done by the generators in our generated project. So let's go back there and let's go to the to-do underscore test.ex. We see that the first thing that's happening here is the same thing that we had in our controller, but instead of con case, we're using a data case. So let me just grab this line here and paste here. Instead of to-do app with generators, we're gonna be putting just to-do app data case. Let me show you guys what we have inside this data case. We see here that it's pretty similar to the one that we had in the con case, but instead of returning the connection, it's just returning OK. And there is we should start like with this list to do items test, but we see here that the first thing this thing is doing is calling this function to do item fixture, and inside this to do item fixture, which is this one up here, is calling this to do dot create to do item. So actually the first test we're going to be doing is like asserting that we can create a to do item with that to create to do item. Okay, so this will be our first test. So it will be, we're going to be asserting that from the to-do item, create to-do item with valid attributes, we are returning OK and to-do items, and we can pattern match that this is a to-do item. But in our main project, we don't have this concept yet. So actually the first thing we're going to be doing is like creating a migration for it. So let's type mix ecto.gen migration to-do items. Okay, create to-do items. This will be create a migration for us. So if you go to migration folder, this is migration that we just created, and we should create a table. So create table. This will be a table called to-do items, right? And this, if we go to the migration here, we can actually grab everything. We have a title, which is a string, and a body, which is a text, and this is timestamps for the update and inserted add. So let's go back to our project. Let's type add body. This will be a text, and let's add title. This will be a string, and we're also going to be adding here the timestamps. Right? This is pretty much what we have here. Right now, my editor gave this. What's the name of this? curly braces. I'm not recall which one's name it is in English, but anyways, this is, we have like the same thing here. This is, once our migration has been created, we can run our migration by typing mix acto.migrate. Then we can assert, oh, the to-do app, we don't have the database yet, so we can type mix acto.reset. Now we can, actually the reset already migrated for us. We can see here that this migration has been triggered. So if we go to our Postgres now, and we go like I think it was, so PSQL, and we type and we list all the a lot of databases here. We can search for to-do app underscore test, which is this one here, right? So -q PSQL to-do app test. We can type DT to check all the tables that we have. We see now that we have a table called to-do items, and we can see that inside this table, if we type the to-do items, we can see that we have a title, which is a string with 255 characters, and a body, which is a text, which has something like 1,000 something characters. I don't recall exactly the right number of it. So this means that our migration was correctly executed. So let's get out of this thing here. And now we should create a to-do items, to-do item to-do.ex. We can now create a folder here called to-do. Inside this folder, we're going to be defining our module, which will be to-do item.ex. Now we can define our module typing def module to-do app.to-do, which is the name of the context, and the name of the module is to-do item dot to end. If we check in our project generators, we can go there and check what we have inside this to-do item module. So to-do item.ex. We see here that we are import this actor.schema, which is necessary for defining a schema that we can use our database. We are also importing this change set, which is the function that we will be using for validating and casting data into a change set, so we can properly insert into our database. So actually, let's do the same thing in our project there. So let me grab this first one here. Oops, use actor.schema. Let's import actor.changeset. We can define a schema by typing schema, which is a macro. The name of this schema will be to-do items. Inside here, we have a field called body, which is a string. Even though we defined there a text and a string, both of them are strings. The only different thing is that this body in the database is set with a larger space in memory. We also have a title, which is also a string. And the last thing, let me remove this thing. Actually, I don't recall. Yeah, let me remove. And one thing we should put here, since we put in our migration, is the timestamps. So what I did wrong here, we don't have this comma. And since this is saying that we didn't import our change set, actually what we'll be doing now is defining a function called change set. So def change set, which we will receive a to-do item and some attributes. The first thing that we're going to be doing is like getting this to-do item, right? Yeah, and then we will be casting. Since we use the import, we don't need to type like acto.changeset.cast. We can just type like this cast here. This is the same thing. And what we are going to be casting is this. We're going to be receiving actually our attributes, so attrs, and we're going to just accept the values that are inside this list, which will be body and title. And see, we're gonna assume that these fields are actually required, so that's why we have this validate require here. So validate required. You need to pass the body and the title. I'm not sure, but I think we didn't put like new files in our migration, and I think that here is with new file. Let's check in this migration. No, they are not, but they are validate required. Let's put here that these are, oh, this is our generated file, our generated product. So let's go to our migration file. So here let's go to the migration and actually put here new files. If you open the term, you can type like mix acto.rollback. This will drop the to-do items, which was the last migration that we did. So we can now type again like mix acto.migrate. Yep, now we have that these two fields are required, even in our database and in our chain set. So let's go back to to-do item. And I believe that right now this is okay. We can go back to our to-do module, and we should actually create that our first test, which should be like that create to-do item. Let's just type test create to-do item with one arity. Yeah. And we're just going to be asserting for the time that we're going to be receiving an okay to-do item. This will be called like to-do app.todo.create to-do item. Okay. So actually, let's define a function here called create to-do item, which receives an attribute. And actually, if you run this, it should fail because that thing there is just returning nothing, right? ATTRS is duplicated relation duplicate table. Guys, I have just run into an error. Once we see the changes in our migration file here, and I type like mix acto.reset. This actually just reset my development database, so I had to type like mix env with passing the env mix acto.reset. This actually dropped our database test. So now if I go to the to-do items underscore test, where is that to-do ex? So if we go here, and now if we run this thing here, this is saying that the to-do item with 0 arity is undefined or private, of course, because it's not not 0 arity, it's with 1 arity. And if we type once again, we can see that it didn't match, because right now we're just asserting that this is returning new. We should return like okay and something. If we run our test once again, I think this should be matching, but this is not what we want to test, right? We want to assert that this thing that we are receiving back is a to-do item. So we can do like this. So to-do app.todo.to-do item, receiving this, and now our test should be failing. Yep, it didn't match. Why didn't match? Because this something is not a to-do item. So if we go to our context function, we should be doing something like this. We should be getting the module, which is a to-do item. So to-do app.todo.to-do item. We're now gonna be passing our attributes into that change set function that we just created. So to-do app.todo.to-do item.change set. And we're going to be passing these attributes. And then we're finally going to be using repo dot, actually we're not alias that repo out, so it will be to-do app.repo.insert without the bang. And now if we go back to our test and run this test here, oh, nice. Our test failed because we forgot to pass the valid and required attributes into the map in our test. So it's saying here that the body can't be blank and the title can't be blank. So let's go back to our test. Instead of passing this empty map, let's pass like body, some text body, and the title will be test title. I think this should be, and actually let's do some kind of formatting here. Like this will be in the new line. I like that this thing will be here and also this here. I think we're fine. So if we run this test right now, all our tests are passing. So that's actually a good point for us to commit. So put here like git add dash dash all git commit dash sm tests passing create to do items, create to do item. Okay. And then we can finally go to that our pretending first test which would be this list to do items. Okay. So if we go now back to our test and actually put here test list to do items with arity 0. Actually, the generator gave us a better name for it. So list to do items return all to do items, and also the create to do items with valid data creates a to do item. Let's update this so it's more meaningful. So create to do item arity create with valid data creates a to do item, and list to do item returns all to do items. Okay. So what our test with generator is doing is creating this is creating a to do item with some valid attributes that it's being defined up here, but let's do it like a step-by-step approach there. So we are just going to use that function that we created just a moment ago. So actually, okay, we should receive a to do item. Oops. Item. This will be so to do app dot to do dot create to do item. Actually, we can grab this exact function here, which will be even faster. Right now we see that we had some duplication of code, so we can like type here alias to do app dot to do. We can now remove this line here, this thing here. So some duplication has been covered. We're using this map in both places, so we can create a module variable with that map. So let's create that valid to do item ettrs, which will be this map, this one here. So instead of passing like that map, we now we can grab this here. And the same thing goes to this place here. If you run our test now, everything should be passing. Yeah, everything is passing. But now we should assert that all the to-do items that we have in our database is just this one that we created. So that's exactly what we are doing here. So it's saying like to-do item, list to-do items, it returns a list with just that to-do item. So let's assert that to-do dot list to-do items is equal to a list containing just that to-do item. If you run this test right now, we see that on the left we have an empty list. That's exactly what we defined here. So we have an empty list. And on the right we actually have like the to-do item that has just been created. So we can solve this by typing the name of our, actually the atom that represents the module of our to-do item, which can be represented like this thing here, to-do app.todo.todo item. You can type this into repo.all, and this should be everything that we need. Oops, I forgot to pass the to-do app.repo.all, right? So if we go back here and run all our tests, we can see that both of our tests are passing, but we have some duplication of code in our context file. The first thing that we can do is like alias the to-do app.todo. Next thing we can do is alias the to-do.todo item, so that we can remove this thing here. We also can, we should also alias the repo. So now we can just do this. Same thing can be done here. Same thing can be done here. And same thing can be done here. Now no complaints. If we go back and we run all our tests, all our tests are passing. We have a warning saying the to-do item is unused on line 16. So let's go to line 16. This thing here is being used. So actually let's put an underscore at it. And if we run our test once again, we shouldn't have no warnings and all tests should be passing. So this is actually a good moment for us to commit once again. So git add -- all, git commit with signed message. And actually let's test passing maybe 4. I can't recall which was the right the last number that we put here. Let's check which was it. So we had like test passing 1, 2, 3, end of video 1, test passing 4. Okay, that's good enough for me. We can go back to our test. So we can go and test the second thing in our module. Actually, now we can go back to our controller. So let's go back to the to-do item controller. And if we go back to our test and we run this thing here, we can assert that this is passing. So we can go to our second test in our to-do item controller. Let's go back to the to-do item controller in our project with the generators. And the next thing that we can test is like new to-do renders a form. Okay, let's do this one then. So we are in the describe function. I believe that I can just leave it like this, and this will work the same thing because we are pattern match from the con case, which was already there. This is more alike on what we have in the generated file, like right this thing here. So let's create a describe block. This will be the new to-do item, do end. What we are testing here, that it's rendering a form, right? So rendering a form, we are receiving a connection. This is doing a get request from the connection from the to-do items path in the function new. So actually this will be the first thing that we're going to be testing. So let's create a test. The name of our test will be renders form. Then we will be getting the connection. This is doing a get request to our connection in the routes.to-do item path, passing our connection, and the function new. If we recall it from our last video, this thing should fail because right now we don't have this new in our path. For us to check that, we can reveal it's just need to type mix pagex.routes. This will return everything that we have. So right now the only thing that we have in our to-do item path is this get /to-do items that goes to the index function. So if you run this thing, this should fail. And not just that, con is being expanded to con. What I did wrong, oh, I forgot to pattern match here. So this is con, whoops. This here is this thing is here. So if you run our test once again, on the find function describe, I should describe. Whoops, I put it on the wrong thing. Now our test should be passing. Okay, let's see, not it should be like saying that which is the error. It's saying that we don't have a matching for that new function in our to-do items path. So what we should do now is go to our router and adding a new function to to-do items / new. This should go to the new function. And actually, if you run our tests once again, we should receive another error saying that the new function doesn't exist. And that's exactly what we received here. So if we go back now to our to-do item controller, and we define a function called new, we can pass our connection and params once again. This is the default for all the functions inside the controller. You can just pass the connection because that's what the controller is supposed to return for us. And we go back to our test and just run this test here. This should give us a good sign. Yep. Now we have something in our items path. That's a new function, and we're returning a connection. Okay, so next thing that we should assert that we're receiving an HTML response with same status 200, and inside that form we should find the new to-do item. If you recall, we did something very similar on the previous video. Let's stop the video right now and try to do this on yourself. I'm going to do right next. So let me stop for a while. Okay, if you were able to complete this next test, pretty good. Let me do it with you guys. So let me go here, and we should like render. Without passing our connection, we should render like a new.html, and we are not gonna pass anything right now. So if you recall, the thing that we should do now is like inside the templates folder, inside the to-do app folder, we should now create a new.html.eex. And inside that, we should put this text, which is, oops, actually forgot, I skipped a few steps. So we should assert here that we are receiving an HTML response, passing the connection with status 200, and we should be pattern match. Not pattern match, actually finding this test new to-do item. If you run this test right now, we should say that we don't have this thing in our template. So let's see. You see, it was search for the new to-do item and found anything. So let's grab this test here, this text, and just paste here. And if we run our test once again, everything is green. So we can, since all tests are passing, this is now a good moment for us to commit once again. So git add -all, git commit, all tests are passing. Let's change this to 5. And let's go to our next test. So right now, actually, we should be receiving that form with all the fields there, but that's not what we're going to be testing right now. Right now, we're going to be testing this create function, which is kind of the different testings we did right now. So let's go for it. Close this thing. So we're going to have this describe block here. This will be a create to-do item to end. The name of our test is redirect to show when data is valid. And the next one is render errors. Okay, let's do this first one. So redirect to show when data is valid. We should be we can see by the name of the test, we should create a template called show.html.ex. We're going to be doing we're going to be sending a post request to do items path in the create function, and we're going to be passing a map that has a key called to do item with some valid attributes that we can refactor and do the same thing that we go here. So let's do this first line in our test there. So let's test redirect to show once a valid to do item is created, we can like receive the connection, and what we are going to be doing is like we're going to be receiving the connection, doing a post request, passing our connection to routes, the to do items path connection with the create function, and we're going to be passing the to do item that contains some valid attributes. We can actually grab from our context. So let's go there and let's search for the to do underscore test.ex. We can grab like this thing here. Go back. We can put this thing here. So we can pass it valid to do items attrs. And if we test this line here, it should fail, right? Because we don't have that create in our router. Yep, we don't have a case for create in our router. So let's go to our router and do now a post request to /to do items. This will go in our to do item controller in the create function. And if we run this test once again, we should receive an error saying that we don't have the create function in our controller. So yeah, the create function in our controller is undefined or private. So if you go to the to do item controller, we can now create a function called create. We receive a connection, but now we are receiving the params. Okay, and let's just return the connection. But this time, this thing is not gonna pass. Like the other times it passed, but this time it's not, because no, it will pass because we're just certain that we are receiving a connection back. But that's actually not a very good test. Let me show you guys something that we can do here. Colin is using controller test 25. Right now we're not using this, but we're going to be using some soon. Actually, I want to show you guys what we are receiving in the params. So we can put like an inspect here with the params, and let's put the test here. So this is the params that we are receiving. And if we run our test once again, we can see that this is the params that we are receiving there, because that's what we pass in our test. Okay, so one nice thing that we can do is like grab this thing here and pasting what we received there, and this is our map. So this would be the to do item map, right? Is unused, but since this is a create function, we should now be testing that this is testing the redirection. This is not showing that we created a record. Get and showing. Okay, let's do this. Let's follow the script here. Well, so this should we should receive a connection, and if actually let's show you guys what happens in the controller. So this is our project with the generator. So if you go to the controller, this is actually creating the to-do item, but that's not what we're doing right now. We actually just getting the connection and redirecting to the show. So actually we should grab just this line here and this line here. Okay, so let's assert that we are redirected params with ID and ID. So assert, we're going to be receiving a map. So receiving a map with ID, and this ID is getting from the connection. Okay, it's because this should do a redirection. So redirected params connection. Oops. And this thing should fail right now, right? Because we're not redirecting anything. Expect the connection should have redirect, but no response was sent. So in the controller, we are going to be redirecting, which is this thing here. So let's redirect to routes to do item path / show to do item. This is another thing that we don't have, we currently don't have, but let's go here and type redirect to connection. This is just a path. Yeah, this is just a path. So actually to routes to do item path, passing the connection and the show with the, actually we should receive the show item, but right now we just care that we are redirecting to that ID. So we should create a thing. Okay. So and passing that ID. Okay. Oops, not here. Guys, I'm actually remember a few things with you guys. So to do it, controller 17. So 17 redirect to colon redirect to. Oh, I think I forgot. Oh, here. That's the problem. This thing here, and I should reserve this. Actually, this should be receiving the created item, right? Yeah, to do item. Okay, so let's do this. We should receive now an OK. To do item. This is the to do app.todo.create to do item with the to do item map, right? And this thing here should receive this to do item because that's what we created. And now if we go to our test and run this thing, to do item paths show is unsupported because we don't have a show in our router. So we can go to our router. We can do a get to do items / ID. This will go to the show function. Now we should go to our controller, create a show function, we should receive the connection and the params. Actually, we should be using the params, but right now we don't care. We should just return the connection. And if we what happened here? Sorry guys, my editor froze, so I had to start once again. So here, if we go to our test and run this thing, now that we have a show, all tests are passing. The next thing that we're going to be asserting is that if we do a get request to that show, we should receive a new connection. So let's assert get. Oops, is asserting that? No, it's just receiving. So we should now receive a connection. We're going to recreate a connection with a get request to con in the routes to do item path, passing our connection and the show function. This is and getting that ID there. This should pass, I guess. Undefined function get. Did I did something wrong? Oops, routes. No. Yup, saying that no function clause match to do items path show. we didn't create it. Router, do item controller show, controller, there is a show. So yeah, actually there is a matching. Let me check here. Function class are not supported. No function class have item pass slash show. Oops, I think it's wrong. It's here. ID. Okay. Yep, so the tests are passing. The next thing that we assert that we are receiving an HTML response, and inside that template we are receiving show to do item. So let's assert that we are receiving from that connection, so HTML response, the connection with status 200, and we are receiving a text containing show to do item. And now this should fail. HTML response underscore response connection 200. Whoops. This should contain, we can assert, and controller test expected connection to have a response, but nothing was sent. All right, because this in the connection we're just returning the connection, so this should be like redirect to, and I don't can recall correctly how this show is using. Oops, actually it's just being rendered, right? It's not redirecting anything. So render connection, we should receive a show.html, and actually this should receive the params, but we are not gonna use it right now, I guess. So what we received here could not render show.html because we don't have that template. So let's go back in that to do. Let's go to the index. Let's create now a show.html.ex. And if we go back to our to do item controller, we should actually let's get that now. We receive a different error because now we should be able to render that. Yeah, and it's looking for this show to do item. So we can go to the show.html.ex and paste this text here. And if we go back and run this test once again, everything is passing. Guys, this video is already getting pretty big, so we're gonna be stopping right now. Let's just add that all tests are passing. I have an alias for that here, so I'm gonna just type ASM. Later I can show you guys what this ASM means, or actually I can show you guys in the end of this video. Like if you go to my .git config, you can see that this ASM is actually adding all the files and committing with signed message. So that's what that is doing. If you wanna copy this thing, be my guest. I think it's pretty useful. And guys, that's all for this video. Hope you guys have enjoyed, and until next time, stay tuned, and soon enough I'll be posting the third video of our TDD series. Bye guys, happy coding!